Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this, the meeting of the Cabinet on Thursday, 18th of May. Apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Raza, and I have Councillor Mahfouz joining online. Councillor Shaw, who attends Cabinet but is not a member of Cabinet, is also not present, and we note that. We also have apologies, I think, from Councillor Gallant, and Councillor Conti is in his place. Other than that, there are no urgent matters. Item 7 is a matter that does have gold papers, so I ask if anybody wishes to refer to them, that you try and avoid doing that. If you do wish to refer them, please give notice, and we will close off the live stream. Are there any declarations of interest? None. In that case, I direct you to the minutes of the previous meeting and ask that you agree them. Thank you very much. There are no appointments to subcommittees or outside bodies. So we move to item number 7, the Environmental Services Greener Ealing Limited contract extension. Councillor Costigan.
Thank you, Chair. Following our success in bringing our waste contract back in-house and the huge improvements to the service, this report agrees to extend our contract with Greener Ealing, our wholly owned council provider, for a further 5 years so that we can continue to provide an excellent waste recycling and street cleansing service to our residents.
Thank you very much. There is a question from Councillor Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. Noting the gold papers, but not specifically going into them, in relation to paragraph 1.2.1 about the price adjustment that's referred to, would you make sure that councillors from all parties have access, once this is agreed, to the indexation clause and the mechanism, so that we can see that after it's agreed later in the year, whenever that might be? And then secondly, with regarding to some of the less well-performing aspects of the GEL contract, such as assisted collection and bulky waste, how will those be dealt with moving forwards if it's agreed tonight?
Councillor Costigan.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. In relation to the gold papers, where it is not commercially sensitive and we're allowed to share it with councillors, and we will do that if that's something that you'd like to see. And in terms of bulky waste and assisted collection, yet I think I've said before that the performance of Greener Ealing has just completely turned the page from where we were previously. I've often said there was a sea of red in terms of our performance indicators, whereas our performance indicators now are all, it's green almost across the board. However, of course, there's always room for improvement, and we continue to focus on a couple of areas, and one of which is bulky waste collection. Some of that was impacted by the HGV driver shortage that we had last year, but we are we're starting to get back on top of that now. The assisted collection, now this is a very small number of people who get assisted collections in the borough. However, it is, obviously an important service, and if the assisted collection is missed, it has, a big impact on that individual. So we're very keen to make sure that we reach 100% performance in that. So it's a high performance target. But what we're doing to make sure we do that, we've got a new system we're bringing in, and what it will mean is that in the cab, when the crew is there, they won't be able to continue with their round, because a kind of a buzzer will go off and tell them, an alarm, that they haven't actually picked up that assisted collection. So that should help us to achieve the very ambitious 100% target we have for that. But we believe that we need to achieve 100% target, and we'll make sure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the basis then of the discussion, unless the Cabinet have any other questions or points to make, I'll direct you to the recommendations in the report and ask that they're agreed. Item number 8, the Health and Wellbeing Strategy 2002 to 2007. Councillor Blacker.
Thank you, Chair. Both the pandemic of 2020 and then the conversations we had with the Race Equality Commission here in Ealing really highlighted the stark health inequalities that face our borough, and how they just are so difficult to meet. The previous Health and Wellbeing Board strategy expired during the pandemic, and this has given us an opportunity to really refresh the strategy and focus on tackling health inequalities, how they intersect, how inequalities across the borough intersect with the building blocks of health, the wider determinants of health, and how we can tackle them to meet a refreshed vision of seeing Ealing's communities thriving with good health and wellbeing, and with fairness and justice in the building blocks of health and wellbeing. So I'd ask Cabinet to note that the Health and Wellbeing Board has already adopted this at our meeting last week. So I'm asking Cabinet to note that and then approve the Council taking part in the resulting actions. And would like to thank both the Public Health team and all our partners for their input into this new strategy.
Again, thank you very much, Councillor Blacker. And I think it's important that we do sort of make it clear that actually Cabinet is noting the Health and Wellbeing Strategy. The Health and Wellbeing Strategy formally is a document and belongs to the Health and Wellbeing Board. And it's at that forum that the, if you like, the formal adoption has already taken place. And as you say, we are noting it. Councillor Conti, I believe you have a question.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the strategy. It was, and obviously the objective tackling inequality in particular. I guess just reading the strategy, there's a lot of broad brush sort of statements and objectives. And
so, Councillor Conti, so just I'll beg your forbearance. It's questions at cabinet. So if you could,
Oh.
yeah. So it's
Just
questions.
digging
Usually,
into it.
I'm sure it is. It's a statement that's followed by a question mark, and I'm sure that you'll
Yes.
manage that. Thank you.
And it was just really just about how the concrete proposals that come from that. And obviously it's come in a long period of time, but when do you envisage more detail coming, and how is that going to be followed up so that, you know, these objectives, these broad brush objectives can be monitored?
So we will be publishing, I think, the first iteration of actions at the next meeting in the Health and Wellbeing Board. So we are getting started as soon as we can. Those action plans will be refreshed as we go through the strategy, and the Health and Wellbeing Board will monitor them. But I would hope there's a kind of role for health scrutiny in doing that as well, and holding me to account for the council's actions in meeting those.
Yeah, absolutely. And very much, as we always say, you know, we want a healthy scrutiny environment in which we, of course, will be held accountable for the pledges and the targets that we set ourselves. So on that basis, again, I direct cabinet to the recommendations that are in the report and ask that they are noted. Thank you very much. So we now move to item number 9, the health of the borough. Councillor Blacker.
Thank you, Chair. This was a commitment we made in the manifesto when we were elected as a new administration last year, to be open and transparent and inclusive with our community, our residents, about how the whole of the council delivers to improve the health and well-being of the borough. So there's a lot of really excellent case studies about how different parts of the council contribute to improving the health of the borough, and we will bring it back to cabinet every year to see progress and change.
Thank you very much. Cabinet members, any questions or contributions? If not, again, if I could direct you to the recommendations in the report and ask that they, I believe, are noted. So agreed. Thank you very much. Let's then go to item number 10, the update on the climate and ecological emergency strategy action plans. Councillor Costigan.
Thank you, Chair. So this report updates with progress on the climate and ecological emergency strategy that we agreed in 2021. So we're now 2 years into that strategy, and the report looks at what we've achieved to date and sets out a programme for the next 2 years, what we will need to focus on in order to achieve the 2030 ambition that both Ealing Council and many other councils in the country have signed up to. The report includes a kind of public facing document that we put on our website that goes into a lot of detail as to what we've achieved. Just to pull out a few areas, for example, we've upgraded, made improvements to about 1,000 homes in terms of making sure that they are energy efficient. We've also installed over 100 solar panels, including 17 schools. We're currently installing decarbonised heating systems in 3 of our leisure centres. We have, as people will know, because I've mentioned it a lot, planted a lot of trees, 7,000 trees just in the last 5 months. We've also really become experts at rolling out electric vehicle charging points. We've now got over 500 in the borough, and we will easily achieve 4 years ahead of target, in fact, the 2,500 that we're being told we need by the Department for Transport. Just recently, we have installed 25 new bike hangers in the borough, with 25 more to come in the summer, and further installations, more than in fact we'd originally planned to happen at the end of this year. And of course, we've got our currently 21 school streets, with 4 more coming on stream from September. We're currently consulting on those. So this report then also looks at where we go, going forward over the next couple of years. We've particularly in this report sort of retrofitted it to include a stronger equalities dimension that I think perhaps wasn't as present in the original report. We're also making an explicit agreement to retrofit first in new developments. And we're being honest about some of the challenges we face. I think there are challenges for the whole country to achieve net zero by 2030. One of those challenges that we have in the council, of course, is that it is a cross-council effort that's required. And we're in this report committing to setting up a new climate leadership board in the council to make sure that that cross-cutting work can happen better. We also recognise that our retrofitting programme can sometimes be a bit fragmented with different departments, doing it in different ways. So again, we're going to establish a more cohesive retrofitting programme that will bring all of the different strands of that work together. And I think finally, probably the biggest challenge we face is government inaction. Central government is giving us neither the powers nor the funding that we need in order to fully address the climate crisis and to ensure that we meet our commitment to net zero by 2030. There is a lack of funding for retrofitting, a massive hole in the budget for retrofitting homes. We've got the leakiest homes in Europe and government is doing almost nothing about it. Funding for active travel has reduced significantly since the pandemic. And so we're also committing in this report to ramp up our own campaigning action to put pressure on government to take the climate emergency as seriously as Ealing Council does. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Costigan. I have a question from Councillor Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. One really important area within the reports is about the carbon offsetting paid for by developers, which will be discussed at the LD PAC meeting, I understand. Do you know when that topic is likely to be discussed within that sort of committee? Just so I can get an idea if it's in the near future or a bit further away. And then related to that, the local plan is very extensive in the sites for development. Has the team modelled the net effect of the local plan on carbon generation?
Councillor Costigan, you might want to go for the second half, but I'd assume that Councillor Manro probably would have a better understanding of the first part of that question, but give it a go.
Okay, well, I'm happy to. Councillor Manro, do you want to answer the second question?
Okay, so as part of the local plan, we're looking at actually putting in higher standards than what the London plan is looking at. And I think it would be, I suppose, extremely difficult to model what might happen in a local plan which is supposed to run for over 15 years and then ask our colleagues in climate change to try and work through which building might be built, which might not be built, when we don't even know. So there is a real commitment to try and make sure the local plan does address this issue of climate and carbon offsetting. We'd rather there wasn't carbon offsetting. We'd rather the buildings were built as carbon zero. But obviously, there are regulations through the London Plan and National Plan where they can't physically achieve that in terms of making or taking all those measures. They do pay substantial sums to help us in carbon offsetting, and data centers are one area where they have to give substantial sums because they use so much energy. So we will work through that, and out of that, we will go through that, but you will see more of that when we do Regulation 19, because we're working through all the responses we received and how we're going to tweak that sort of policy, because it may not be acceptable to the inspector, because we have to make it in conformity with the London Plan and National Plan. So yes, we can do a local derivation of that and make it stronger, but we need to make sure that it will pass through a Reg 19 inspection. So that's what the work will carry on and do, and it will come out through the Reg 19 process.
I think probably the only thing to add to that is that I think Councillor Manro, you alongside the chair of LDAP, Councillor Brett, had a very productive meeting actually with the Ealing Matters campaign group and representatives of quite a few campaign groups from across Ealing, actually just last week, to talk about the local plan and indeed the programme for the local plan advisory panel over the forthcoming months. And I think we've agreed with them that we will be looking at about 5 key policy areas, climate action being one of them in terms of how we develop policy ahead of the Regulation 19 consultation. I'm certain as we sort of enter the new civic year, the work programme of that committee will be published in due course. Unless there's anything else that anybody wanted to add, if there are any questions or comments from cabinet members, I will direct you to the recommendations in the report and ask that they are agreed. So we move then on to item number 11, the waste reduction and recycling plan, councillor Costigan.
Thank you, Chair. This is a document that we are required to produce by the Mayor of London because the Mayor of London has got a very strong commitment to reducing waste in London. And our plan feeds into the London-wide plan. We are, of course, as I have said before, consistently in the top 3 London boroughs when it comes to performance on recycling. So we are one of the boroughs that really, helps the mayor most in order to achieve his goals in terms of reducing waste and increasing recycling in London. Some of the key areas set out in the report for where we're going to focus our work to really kind of, push our performance even further would be in, for example, food waste. There is a big issue with food waste being placed in the residual bins. And really, if we could get that food waste out and into the food waste bin, we would make a huge impact on our waste levels in the capital. It's a challenge that all of London is facing, but through our rollout of communal food waste bins in flats, and the work we're also doing to see if we can come up with more innovative solutions for flats above shops, which are a real challenge. We are hoping that this plan can help us achieve that. Of course, the looking at recycling figures, although we're doing brilliantly on them, we need to go beyond that and actually think about not just recycling and reuse, but also avoiding waste in the first place and focusing on what they call the circular economy. So we'll be in future looking more at waste avoidance and also decarbonisation of our waste. That's going to be as important, if not more important, down the line than recycling. So our approach on that is outlined in this very detailed document as well. I think finally, and this is becoming a bit of a pattern, there is a big issue, again, with government inaction in this area. This actual report, this action plan is usually a 5-year action plan, but we've been told just to write a 2-year action plan. The reason being that there is so much uncertainty as to what might happen with our waste in the future. Government has continually said they are going to make changes that would improve waste and recycling. For example, the polluter pays, and a deposit scheme for bottles. However, having talked the talk on this for at least 2 or 3 years, no actual laws or legislation have come forward on this. And as a result, waste authorities and collection authorities such as Ealing, we're sat here waiting for action, and it's very difficult for us to come up with plans in the absence of the government really having a clue about what they want to do here and basically not having the bottle to take action on waste minimisation. However, we are where we are. We're doing what we can in Ealing in the face of that government inaction.
Councillor Conti.
Thank you. Councillor, it was just last week at Scrutiny Panel 3, we heard that 12% of all the stuff that gets sent to, the waste that gets sent to recycle ends up being contaminated and therefore has to end up going to landfill. So I was just wondering in terms of, I couldn't really see anything in the report on sort of beyond sort of the headline figure about how that plan could be addressed moving forward to actually make sure that the amount that we're sending, firstly, isn't contaminated in the first place, but then secondly, is there anything that we can do further down the line to ensure that more of the waste actually ends up being recycled?
I think that's a good question, and it's definitely an area that we're looking at because one of the problems is actually the food waste, as I just outlined earlier. When you put food waste in any of the bins, and people include it, put it in the recycling as well, it can impact the quality of the recycler. But in particular, what we're finding is bottles that still have water in them, for example, it can wet the paper, and then the paper is not good enough quality. So, we do actually, split it when it comes away from the curbside, and we sort it at that point to try and, pull out the good quality stuff. But really, we kind of have to ask people to take more care and attention when they are using the recycling to make sure that they don't contaminate it themselves. So it's an education job really on that one, to actually speak to residents and make sure they understand what happens to their recycling afterwards, and the best way to present it at the curbside to ensure that the maximum amount of waste actually ends up being recycled. But we have, hugely reduced the amount of our waste that goes to landfill, to the extent that it's less than 1% overall that goes to landfill. And that is purely because, it gets contaminated, including being, burned, things like that. And that's why it would end up going to landfill. So it's a very, very tiny percentage that would end up there.
Councillor Zizimos.
Given we have a recycling rate of below 50% of for the last 4 or so years, how does the council hope to realistically achieve the big jump to get to 65% municipal waste rate by 2030? And my second question is, given the possible implications of the environmental bill, has the council considered scrapping its garden waste charge early in the hopes of increasing the recycling rate like some other local authorities do?
Thank you, Councillor Zizimos, for the question, and welcome, I believe, to your first cabinet meeting and first asking of questions of us. So thank you very much for both of the well thought out questions. In terms of how we will further increase our recycling rate to achieve the longer term plan that the Mayor of London has set for all London boroughs, I think we've already proved that we are massively ahead of the game compared to almost every other London borough. Like I say, we're consistently in the top 3. So we have a great track record of being ahead of the game on recycling. But the areas, as I say, that will really bring us to the next level and will help us to achieve that higher rate is really focusing on the food waste. We really have to get that food waste out of the residual waste. And that will make a big difference for us. The other area, again, as I said earlier, is about making sure we get all of our flatted properties onto food waste collection and recycling collection. And we've done really well. We've gone from quite a low level of something like 5% that had both separate recycling and food waste collection in flatted blocked properties to now 25%. So it's been a really big increase in just a couple of years. But we do need to keep pushing on that and make sure we achieve. We've set ourselves a target of 90% of flats in blocks of flats having access to both separate recycling and separate food waste over the next few years. And there's always difficulties doing this. It can be a slow process. You've got to work with management companies as you go along, but it is doable. We make great progress so far. In terms of your second question about the mysterious missing environment bill, as I outlined earlier, there isn't something coming forward. We haven't seen anything happening. The government is all talk and no action on this. However, the point that you're raising, which is specifically about garden waste, in fact, you could, if you wanted to get to the very top of the recycling league table in London, you could encourage everybody we could go and collect garden waste every week, and we could encourage everyone to give us loads of their garden waste. Technically, you could do that. Personally, I think that's cheating, because all you're really doing is you're pulling waste out of people's composts in their back garden, places it's already happily, recycling itself. And instead, you're getting us to send trucks around to collect it from their door, hugely increasing the carbon footprint of the council. So in fact, it has a perverse impact on the work we're trying to do about climate action. So I wouldn't recommend that we went down that route. There might be a borough or two in London that does that. Don't think they're Labour boroughs, but we wouldn't be doing that. And we wouldn't recommend any other borough did.
Thank you very much. Are there any other contributions or questions from Cabinet? If not, then again, I direct you to the recommendations in the report and ask that they are agreed. This brings us to the conclusion of the final Cabinet meeting of this civic year. And I want to take this opportunity, as is customary, but also required practice, because it's honourable and the right thing to do, to thank all of our incredible staff who have served the Cabinet incredibly well over this past year and work with us to collaborate and work through all of the incredible things that we've done. And of course, we look forward to reporting on in future cabinets when we look at the outrun of the council plan. I'm also going to take this opportunity to put on record my thanks formally to both Councillors Wall and Raza. Councillor Wall, as you know, left the cabinet a few months ago owing to her personal circumstances. And Councillor Raza won't be joining us in cabinet next year. But I wanted to put my thanks on record for their service to the borough, both of whom I know will continue to serve from the backbenches in many, many important ways. And I want to thank them for all of their contributions in their respective portfolios over these last 2 years. We do not yet have confirmed the date of the next meeting of Cabinet, but it will be at some point after the annual meeting next week. So until then, thank you very much all for being here, and we'll see you soon.